I think that's been the problem with the formula, in my opinion, as I've been surrounded by real estate now for a couple decades. I sat back and just sort of adopted this principle that if you just buy these long-term properties, you hold on to them, you rent them to good tenants, you're making this passive cash flow every month. Over time, you could create a road to wealth. And what I began uncovering was the fact that the money would essentially run out before I could acquire enough properties to make a big enough dent to move the needle. And if you're just doing very simple math, you can compute this on your own, right? Let's assume that you're going forward on $200,000 properties. We're going to use that number just to keep it close to where yours are at. I think it's harder and harder to find that price point nationwide, but in your area, it sounds like it's still probable, which is great. And let's say that you've got to come up with a 20% down payment on each property that you acquire. You're now at $40,000 out of pocket before you've covered your closing costs as well. You're now at 2 to 3% in closing costs. I'm going to stay as conservative as I possibly can in this just hypothetical example. 2% would be another $4,000, so you're at $44K per property. If you're hitting home runs on these properties, or let's call them triples, and you're making $500 a month in positive cash flow, which seems to be on the high side from where you're realizing now, again, a conservative number, and even a less realistic conservative number based on the higher interest rates that we've been seeing today too. If you're averaging $500 per, it's going to take another 10 doors just to get another 5K per month in your back pocket, right? 10 doors requires $440,000 out of pocket, plus another $1.6 million worth of debt for your first mortgages, right? $160,000 mortgages on each one times 10. So to me, the average household is going to struggle to come up with numbers that make a big enough difference. Most people that I talk to, it seems like that $10,000 per month number is sort of an easy round figure to target first and foremost before you start to work up from there. So based on these numbers here, you'd have to double what I just did, right? So not 1.6 million in debt, you're at 3.2 million in debt. Not $440,000 worth of out-of-pocket costs for the down payment and closing. You're at $900,000. That's to get you to $10,000, and that's if they're each cash flowing $500 a month, which I think is unrealistically optimistic right now. So for me, long-term buy and hold real estate eventually became something that I categorically would consider to be a long-term net worth driver. And that's a solution to building that maybe eventual retirement plan or a legacy that you can leave behind to the children. But it's not an easy way to transition from that, call it a 9 to 5, just the proverbial 9 to 5, into this sort of passive retirement that we have, visions of in our minds. And that required me then to start saying, well, where else within the real estate world, which I'm obviously passionate about, could I potentially uncover these shorter term cash flow solutions? Because it eventually just wasn't the long-term buy and hold real estate game that was going to get me there. I've so seldom met people where they're sailing Greece on some chartered catamaran and saying thank God for my rental. That's what got afforded this trip. Most of us are scratching our heads half the time saying, what the F is this actually making me more broke than it is making me rich? Because we run into these sort of time periods where things build up or snowball, and you've got a couple AC units out at the same time, and then a roof needs to be replaced, and the more properties you acquire, the more problems you have, and all it takes is 5 or 6 issues at the same exact time to really cause a problem. And so that's why I asked the question, is whether or not there is a possible interest in exploring other directions inside real estate, because I think long-term buy and hold is great, but I don't think you're going to necessarily get what you're looking for if your answer to my question is, what are you hoping to accomplish, is passive cash flow. It's just not a cash flow solution, long-term net worth. And it may require more work to do it, but if it makes 10 times the amount of money or 20 times the amount of money that the property would, are you willing to put in 10 or 20 times the amount of work that this property is taking you? And the answer is probably sure. Just don't be so hyper focused on the long-term buy and hold real estate that you've become comfortable with to think that that's the only direction that you have to continue to explore. And maybe I wasn't looking in the right places. I don't want to bash the whole industry, but I kind of felt a little bamboozled after a while because it just seemed like I was tricked into thinking that long-term buy and hold real estate was the answer. And as I began to really just lay out silly examples like that in 3 minutes or less, the numbers didn't check out. And I'm like, why couldn't I just do this in my head when I was 22 years old, getting into real estate and falling in love with it, and realize right then and there that buying properties with a $500 net cash flow expectation is unaffordable to get me to a point where I can just kind of sit back and crack my knuckles and babysit them and do what I want the rest of the day. It's like, I don't know too many households that can do that. I do know people who have accomplished it, but it's literally still single digit. And I'm around a lot of real estate people. And it's like the average person sitting in a real estate investment association is broke. And there's maybe 1, 2, 3 guys in there that are killing it. I got buddies that are in the triple digits indoors. But man, they work hard. Passive my ass. Man.